That was cool! You've been hit.
I come to make an announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog's a bitch.
Endless salad and breadsticks.
This map tastes delicious.
Olive Garden, when you're here, you're fancy.
Yo! Welcome to another Untimely review. So of course I had to get this shirt in the video some type of way after putting Sonic music and memes in pretty much all my videos at this point. But instead of just taking a picture of it, I thought it would be funnier if I filmed myself with it. I was incorrect. But with all that out of the way, let's get right into the story. So major spoilers for Ogilvy Maurice Hedgehog's first live action movie. Not including all of these, I guess. This is the second movie in a row with a themed intro. I love it. Then there's that man Kiryu, also great. And the movie actually starts in medias res, or as I like to call it, the hoodwinked principle, where we see this little blue guy running from another guy that really wants him dead. We get the freeze frame BET special, yep, that's me, I bet you're wondering how I got there, where the blue blur gives some quick narration before we get sent back to the very beginning of it all. Well, not really the very beginning, but the beginning of the story at least, you know what I mean. We get some backstory and introduction to this owl lady who's obviously gonna die so she doesn't get a card, and we find out that this little guy's name is Sonic, the OG Glizzy Goblin. Hey, yo! Furry Patient Zero, hyped up on too much gamer fuel. I wrote a lot of these, so just pick three. A Knight of the Wind, Adventure is his middle name. We're all living in his world. Loves to feel the sunshine, lives by his own feelings, hangs on to the edge.
We get it. You play the game. Shut the fuck up.
My fault, OG.
Now, because Sonic is reckless and doesn't listen, his owl mom gets shot with an arrow and she sends him to Earth because he's not safe on the island that he once grew up on. Also, she leaves him these nice rings that open up portals around the universe. Very neat. Too bad she's gone now. Anyway, here's our title sequence. 10 years after all that, we pick up in Montana with a cop hiding behind a sign to catch speeders who's bored, who then gets a call from another cop at the station who is far too stupid to be a cop. But this is Montana, and it's not like there's a very rigorous process to being a cop anywhere in the US to begin with. Anyway, Sonic messes with the cop, which is very on brand, and I love it. The cop rides off to do some very important cop work, which leaves Sonic to give this turtle the feeling of euphoria, or shocked his little heart into a heart attack. Let's just go with the first one. We see Sonic's little cave that he lives in with all the stuff that he totally stole, since it's not like he could have paid for any of this, but we do find out that he hates mushrooms. Is that important? Not really, but it makes his rivalry with Mario much more interesting and fun to me. Through Sonic's narration, we find out that he's been living in this town long enough to call the car cop from earlier the Donut Lord, and that the town crazy person is apparently the only one who's actually seen him. We also find out that Sonic is actually an incredibly sad and lonely person whose isolation has driven him to develop parasocial relationships around town for him to feel some sort of connection in his life. But ooh, then there's some raccoons. We switch over to raccoons with their robber masks and tiny freaky little hands. After that fun distraction, we learn that Donut Lord's real name is Tom. Alright, character, almost boring. And Tom's wife is Maddie. Takes best supporting character to a whole new level. So Maddie gives Tom a letter from San Francisco PD telling him that he can finally leave Podunk, Montana and work in the big leagues. And just to show how great Maddie is, she bought 2 cakes just in case Tom didn't get the promotion. And here's where I'm gonna pause really quickly again, because there isn't a lot of times, at least in the movies I've reviewed so far, where both characters in a relationship actually deeply care about each other and neither one of them are dickheads. It's very nice and refreshing. And after that touching moment, we see Tom talking to a donut, so the whole Donut Lord thing makes even more sense now. Back with Sonic, he's watching kids hit dingers.
Gone forever, Aaron Hernandez.
And we get more time with Sonic being sad and lonely, playing with himself.
Why would you say that? Why would you say that?
And because of his deep sadness, Sonic does what he does best and runs and runs and runs until he sets off an EMP, because that's a thing that Sonic can do now, apparently. Now, because that EMP was huge, of course the government gets involved, which means it's time to get introduced to Dr. Robotnik. Prime example that if a dude looks evil, he's probably evil. So while Robotnik is using his power glove to control his robots, he also says this.
Look what came out of my egg sack.
What the fuck?
And again, I shouldn't have to say why this guy is a danger to society. Oh, and there's another dude called Agent Stone here too, but he's just Robotnik's cheerleader, so. Henchman! Now, with the devilishly dubious Dr. Robotnik on Sonic's trail now, and even though I would think that he should be able to use one of the rings in his cave safely, he decides, nah, I've gotta go do this outside of my safe cave. Before we get to see his daring escape though, we switch over to Tom and Maddie's Olive Garden commercial.
Because when you're there,
Your family.
And after that, we see that Sonic ran all the way from his cave to Tom's house because apparently it's safer there. And although it would have been cool to see how he managed to get past the military and state-of-the-art robots, that's gonna take up too much of the runtime, so instead, he's just there now. But before he can use one of the rings to get to the Mushroom Kingdom, which is where his owl mom told him to go if Earth ever went south, Tom sees him and ha! Okay. That is the wrong version. Excuse me. Much better. So after tranking Sonic and causing him to drop his rings in a portal to San Francisco, Tom put the little blue guy in a cage to wait it out. Once Sonic is awake, him and Tom banter a little bit, but before they can really get to understand each other, Tom has to hide Sonic because Robotnik pulls right up to Tom's front door. Egghead tries to con Tom into letting him in the house, but even with all those formulas and robotic schematics in his head, he's still too stupid to realize when he's being played. I mean, he still sends his robots undetected to search the house, but you know, good on Tom for doing his best. Robotnik then pulls out his urban supremacy card. Oh, this must be how I sound. But at least I don't have those dry ass lips while disrespecting rural folk. Usually. Anyway, Sonic causes a commotion in the kitchen, but when they get in there, it's just a raccoon doing what they do. And although it does save Sonic like 30 seconds, since Robotnik pulls out robo guns on Tom, he ends up revealing himself. Tom then sneaks Robotnik while he's terrified of Sonic, which lets the two of them get away. Then, Agent Stone lets Robotnik put his hand in his mouth. It's not really important, just freaky. And while Tom and Sonic are driving away, Sonic explains who he is, what's going on, why he's there, and all the usual stuff that comes during the road trip section of movies. But they don't get too far before Tom just kicks Sonic out of the car and tells him, figure it out yourself. Now you think that this would be a problem for him because he said he could barely feel his legs after being tranked, which means, you know,
I lose my speed.
Hey, it's me again. So I know this isn't the review part of the Untimely review, but if you could help me understand one quick thing, that'd be great. Why exactly did Sonic not just use a map to get to San Francisco on his own? Tom could have gave him his phone, would have had GPS, back and forth, 20 minutes tops. But instead, they just drive there, and like not even in a cool go-kart racer way, they just regular people drive there. I just think that's kind of weird for Sonic. So if you could help me understand that, that'd be great. Okay, bye now. Once they're back on the road, Tom tries to set some ground rules, but the first thing Sonic does is rob a tourist trap, so off to a great start. When Tom goes to check in on Wade, the cop from earlier who's dumb, Sonic does the exact opposite thing that Tom asked and goes into a biker bar. And then we get this line.
Men in Black, but not as likable or charming as Will Smith.
Personally, I like aggressive Will Smith, but that's just me. And up until this point, Tom has been pretty smart so far. He's just unfortunately not smart enough to realize that they probably wiretapped the phones, but they do even better and are just standing right there during the convo. When Tom eventually hangs up and goes back to the car, somehow he's surprised that the hyperactive blue hedgehog with attitude isn't where he told him to be. He's not too bad though, he's just chilling in this bar waiting for his ZZ Top cover band, and yes, I did have to look up who that is. Then we see Sonic, the klepto, stealing this lady's notepad, which has to be intensely traumatic, since to her notepad just straight up disappeared. But it's alright, he's using it to write his bucket list, so all his crimes don't matter. And because Tom is such a nice guy, he's helping him get through the list, so it's a montage, baby! They're having fun, but that's cut short when some scary biker men step to them because they think that Tom and this little blue guy who Tom told everyone has a weird skin condition are hipsters. And as you know, hipsters aren't allowed in these parts. Which of course leads to an all-out bar fight because that's what happens in these places. Or at least every movie, TV show, and other media will tell me happens in these places. And because this is a movie with a character that can move fast, of course, that also means that we get a scene where he's moving so fast that all the other characters are frozen in time, which visually is always fun, but also makes zero to no sense. Just like that sentence. Luckily, they make it out okay, but at the motel, once Sonic gets tuckered out, Tom sees on the news that he's officially a wanted man, so he's gotta deal with that and that little blue alien too now. The next day on the road, Tom tells Sonic that he's leaving Green Hills to make a new life in San Fran, which Sonic, does not like at all. I mean, Sonic won't be on Earth anymore, so he really shouldn't care, but he's very sentimental like that. And while that's going on, Robotnik,
Dr. Robotnik.
Dr. Robotnik is being evil while playing on his holograms, and it's at this moment that I realize just how much this dude fucking Jim Carrey loves to pose. I mean, look at this fucking guy. Now, I never really got deep into his career like that, and this is only the third movie that I've done with him in it, but golly, the way this dude is moving, he should be like the live-action Plastic Man. No CGI either, just let him go crazy. But the reason Dr. Robotnik is actually playing with his holograms is because he's sending a transformer after Sonic and Tom. Sonic does the spin dash and wrecks the tank truck thingy that harpooned their truck, and then he flosses because even though this movie has a lot of cool references to OG Sonic, they still gotta appeal to the Fortnite generation of youngsters.
It's the guy from Fortnite!
The action scene keeps going. There's a shout out to the Fast and the Furious because, duh, there should be. One of the robots inside one of the robots inside one of the robots inside of the tank truck thingy is a fan of Gunna because
To the top off.
that is so fucking stupid. It's staying in there though. Sonic gets blown up for a death fake out because obviously he didn't fucking die halfway through the movie. Egghead gets into Agent Stone's personal space, something he has a habit of doing. He also speaks Japanese for no reason, which means he's a weeb, which, you know, makes sense. But we can't worry about that now. Sonic is still hurt, so Tom takes him to the best vet he knows, his wife. Now it is strange that considering Tom is a fugitive of the law and was driving in a truck with no roof, no one noticed or reported anything, but we can't worry about that. Sonic's hurt. We need to deal with two sisters arguing first because the movie has time for that for some reason. There's a shout out to Crush 40, which means Eggman and I have the same playlist, which is awful to think about, but at least we get a montage of him studying one of Sonic's needles while being super weird. We also see the bottom of Sonic's feet, which I'm only bringing up so that I could play this clip.
Put those grippers away!
Anyway, Sonic does wake up and gets these cool shoes from Puma that I wanted so bad, but they never actually made retail versions of, probably because it would have been too cool for this world, but I also probably would have spent too much money on them, so maybe this actually is for the best. Sonic, though, gets his new shoes and Maddie on the team to go help get his rings back. And this is the last time that I'll stop before the actual review. Why did they let Sonic drive? And I know that Sonic did take over for Tom earlier in the movie when they were getting chased by that Transformer, but that was on an almost empty highway and was not the same as crowded downtown San Francisco. So we already know that Tom can drive because of all of this, and I assume that Maddie can drive because most people trying to do the whole adult thing can drive. So why exactly did they let the alien hedgehog, who definitely can't even touch the pedals, drive? Is it because it's just a joke? Probably. Is it because it's just a kid's movie and I'm overanalyzing this little throwaway thing that doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme of things?
I don't have the answer to these questions. I don't have the answer to these questions. I don't have the answer to these questions.
I don't know why I expected a real answer. Okay. Maddie and Tom sneak Sonic into the building that they need to get into to get his rings, but he can't keep his mouth shut, which is becoming more and more annoying. But Tom's response is that he has a child that he specifies is not his in this duffel bag, which just makes everything so much worse. I mean, it's not like there's any consequences for it though, so who cares? Sonic finally gets his bag of rings back. Sonic and Tom share just the sweetest moment together, but they take too long, and Dick Dastardly's biggest fan
Copy my whole fucking flow! Word for word, bar for bar!
finds them, so of course there's a big fight. There's action, slow-mo, attempted manslaughter, Eggman finally being called Eggman, and now we're back to where we started. So Sonic starts throwing his rings and running all around the world, but Eggman's still on his very pointy tail. All that running ends up with them back in Green Hills, and even though Tom has seen Sonic knocked out before, when he gets knocked out again, he thinks he's dead again, and I don't understand why they would go through the trouble of trying to make this tense again, so we're just gonna do what Sonic would do and fast forward. So now that Sonic has gotten Thor's powers, he uses the proven strategy of bouncing on Eggman's robots to break it enough, and with the help of Tom, sends him to the Mushroom Kingdom. So with him gone, Tom decides to stay in Green Hills, and him and Maddie kind of adopt Sonic. Not sure how this plays out, but I guess we'll find out in the sequel. And the movie ends with another ad for Olive Garden, Eggman getting even eggier, and a quick intro by a little fox with two tails. Alright, now that the story's out of the way, what did I think? Let's actually start with the story, because it's alright. This is actually the second time that I've watched this movie, so maybe subconsciously I'm being more critical of it, but it's really just alright to me. It's a cool little, technically road trip movie that I wish spent a little more time on the road trip aspect, where Tom and Sonic could have bonded more than just that one scene in the bar, since I don't think they sold their relationship as well as they could have. But even with all that being said, there are a few moments of genuine care between characters that I really think show the heart behind this movie. The only problem is those moments are few and far between, and while I was joking about certain things being unbelievable since, you know, the whole blue hedgehogs with a top speed at like 700 miles per hour is silly in general, I do think that the story would have worked for me a bit more if there was a real reason for Tom or Maddie to actually care about Sonic. Like something that ties them together instead of Tom just being like, yeah, sure, little guy, I'll do whatever you need me to. I do like this movie, even outside of my Sonic standing. I think there's a lot to like about it. The revamped Sonic model looks great, I think most of the comedy works, and I think for a chill movie, it does work. And for a kid's movie that's supposed to show off Sonic to a new generation, who might only know him through memes, slightly mediocre recent games, or something about furries, I'm sure, playing it safe might have actually been the best option for them. So with that in mind, I think the story does what it needs to, but even with a somewhat lackluster story, for me the main draw is obviously always just the characters. Now, I only know James Marsden from X-Men, where they didn't give him anything to do, and then Dead to Me, which I watched the first season of, because I thought the premise and characters seemed interesting, and for no other reason than that. But back to Tom, I think he's cool. Not like as actually a cool person, but he works as the good human character. And I must say that I appreciate him not using his gun at all, since you know how cops are. Although that Trank gun from earlier was calling it close, but you know. But my main issue with him is the same as the rest of the cast, and that's that they're really not all that interesting. They fit their archetypes well and everything, but even with this version of Sonic, I was kinda let down. And that actually brings us to the main guy himself. So I understand that over the years Sonic has changed from his adventure and heroes days, but I also know that he's not this silly. And I'm not saying that he's a joke machine the entire movie either. There's serious moments throughout that I do think ground the character more, but instead of snarky one-liners that come across as, I know it's a little cheesy, but I'm just having fun, we get more of a, hey guys, look at me, aren't I zany type of humor that he's going for, and it can get grating. For me, Sonic always had a little corn to him, but he was still cool. And I'm not gonna be the old head and say that the old version is better, because I don't objectively think it is. I just know that it wasn't what I was expecting, and it kinda hurts my experience, especially on a rewatch. Oh, look at me talking about how the blue anthropomorphic animal isn't the radical and cool guy that I remember him being, but I'm not saying that in a way to be like, this isn't my Sonic. It was more of a realization that one, I'm old, and two, things change. In the movie, he has this kind of annoying Deadpool adjacent personality, and I get why, because it's popular, but like, why? Maybe it's because I haven't played many of the games past Unleashed, or maybe it's because they're drawing more from the comics, which I haven't read because there's so many and words intimidate me. But then I remember that this is also a much less experienced and young Sonic, so it makes sense that he's not rolling around at the speed of sound and is still trying to find his place in his world. When we get to Sonic 2, it'll be interesting to see if he's still getting in trouble because of his simple curiosity, or if his steadfast heart of gold keeps him on track. But even with all that, it doesn't really matter because he's got endless possibilities. See, I can be annoying too. I do think that they did a good job with including things like his rebelliousness and general carefree nature, but I am really hoping that he ends up growing more as the series goes on. It doesn't even have to be more in line with how I picture him, because I do think this version should stand alone, but tapping into the more interesting aspects of him, like environmentalism or his want to always help people, would greatly improve him to me. I do wonder though if the reason I feel this way is because Sonic used to be written to be older than I was, so I saw him as a cool older person. Or Hedgehog? Whatever, it doesn't matter. But now that I'm way older than even he was written to be back then, I just find it a little annoying. Not sure, much to think about. But for what it is, I do think that Ben Schwartz does a good job of conveying that childlike but grew up solely through media type of character. Okay, back to the other characters. Jim Carrey as Eggman would have never been my pick, but for a more comedic version, I was surprised at how well he works. He's very much a cartoon villain, and since this is way closer to like Sonic Boom than I would say Sonic X, I think it makes sense for him to be so over the top. And with him not even being super eggy yet, I'm really excited to see how far he goes. Agent Stone is okay as a new character. He serves really no purpose other than henchman. They could have literally just made him a robot, but It's fine, like for comedic reasons, it's whatever, I don't really care. Like Lee Majjoub seems cool, but he just doesn't do anything in this for me. And then there's Maddie. Oh, Maddie. So Tika Sumpter is given nothing to do, but is the most supportive woman I've ever seen in a movie. There's absolutely no way that you can convince me that anyone else would see their husband on the news being chased by the US government for terrorism, have him show up with a blue alien, and then adopt him like this is normal. She's wonderful. She deserves better in Sonic 2. But with everything, I think this was a good start to the SCU. And while I do hope that they get a little closer to what I have in my head of Sonic and the gang, I still enjoyed this movie. Is it because I love Sonic more than most people? Probably. But there was no way that I wasn't going to be biased during this review anyway, so whatever. It's still a fun movie, and that's where they were going for. The movie could have easily been phoned in and trash, but it's obvious that there was a lot of love being put into this movie. But what did you think? Was the movie just a one-way track, or did it overcome all odds? Let me know in the comment section below. I will be using Sonic lyrics in the next review, so get used to it. Mayhaps like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.